Today's episode of the Golf Podcast is sponsored by Bombas. Seriously, it's time to get rid of your old, dingy, worn-out socks. Bombas are athletic leisure socks re-engineered to look better, feel better, and perform better. And they're not joking, Mike. I don't think I can get out there and play around without them anymore. I'm addicted to these. They're super soft. They're made with long staple Pima cotton. It's a premium cotton and it has that natural moisture wicking properties, which is great for this time of year. I love them. Probably my favorite is that little blister tab that they have on the back of the sock. It's a little ingenious thing that kind of keeps the back of your golf spikes from rubbing, and everybody kind of gets that spot where, it gets worn out after 18 holes, but not anymore with these. So love them. I can't get enough of them. How about you?
Yeah, talk about the ultimate comfort. I love these things. In fact, I tied my best round ever last week, Frank, with my Bombas on. And it was like a cold and wet and rainy day. But, these things are great. They're super comfortable. And I love having my own set of socks just, designated for golf. It's perfect.
Sounds like you got a lucky pair now too, right?
Exactly.
And you know what's really cool? I love all the different, colors that they come in. I'm that kind of guy who loves to make a little bit of a statement with my socks. But the cool thing is, if you're not, or if you just can't get enough of them and you want to wear them to work too, or whatever it may be, they come in solids now too. You can get them in black, navy, gray, and white, so you can wear them for any occasion. And the best part about this is now you can get 25% off 4 pairs or more for first-time customers by using the promo code GOLFGET25 at checkout. So just go to bombas.com. That's bombas.com/golf and use that promo code GOLFGET25. You'll get 25% off, and you're going to, trust me, you're going to want 4 pairs. Otherwise you're going to be waiting for that laundry cycle, because if you're like me, you're going to be addicted to them. So check that out, bombas.com/golf. And now, Mike, on to the show. Hey, welcome to the 93rd episode of the Golf Podcast. Great topic tonight. We're going to talk about lag putting. This is a huge one for me lately. I've kind of rediscovered it. We had on the site, Mike, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks back, there was an article published on lag putting on the website, and I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But that just kind of got me thinking. I want to talk about it when we get into it, but I've been practicing it. I've been seeing a lot of success from it. So I'm very excited to really dig into this topic tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the strongest parts of my game, especially the short game. It's actually been working really well for me. And, I talked about this at the top of the show, but last week I shot the best round, or tied the best round. I was so close to breaking it. All I had to do was par the last hole, but I ended up bogeying. The lag putts were great. It actually, a lot of 2 putts, a lot of 1 putts even on the card that round. And it was real helpful. Tough greens, lots of undulation. So, definitely something that I love to focus on because I'm pretty good at it. So.
Yeah, and you know what? Getting good at it is where you're going to really see those kind of strokes just falling off your game as you see less and less 3 putts. Well, as we've talked about before, you're never going to totally eliminate the 3 putt, but by just focusing on that area and just kind of getting rid of that, what feels sometimes like a wasted stroke, can really help that bottom line, so to speak. But otherwise, just around the game, Mike, I'm extremely excited. I think if you go back a year in the podcast and start to listen to some of last year's episodes around this time, you and I were lamenting about how the season was over. We had snow in October, but different story this year. You could probably hear it in my voice. I'm a little bit more excited, but it's been in the Northeast November. We've been in the 60s and 70s. I've been playing as much as possible. Played today, had a really great round, wet round. I'll give you that. It was a little wet out there. A lot of standing water, but still, to me, that's all bonus golf,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm playing up at Ballyon Friday, Frank, and we talked about that course before. And the fact that we're still playing this late, it's been such a treat, like you said. But hey, we had a pretty good summer. You can't argue with that.
Yeah, you can. And you know what? I think for me, why I'm so excited about it is that I've kind of gotten my swing back, so to speak. And I was so nervous because what I did is I actually was working with Kyle Aldering, who was our guest on last week's episode when we were talking about how your swing looks. And I've been working with him a little bit more long distance. He's an excellent coach. I mean, this guy, he knows it in a second. He can kind of see areas where you can improve. But we also talk about not making any drastic changes. So I had sent him some videos of my swing, just some areas I wanted to improve. And he gave me some very small pointers Nothing changing my swing too dramatically, just kind of changing my setup, standing a little taller over the ball, things like that, just to help my consistency. And,
Mhm.
I won't lie, the growing pains were a little tough. In mid-October, I had some rounds that were just kind of dismal as I was getting used to that new mechanics and, just kind of get that muscle memory down on the new swing. And I was kind of worried. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go out like this the end of the season, and then I'm going to have to be
Right.
thinking about this, all winter. But it's kind of clicking. Today, I would say, even though it was not my best round ever from a score wise, I hit some of the best balls of the season.
Mhm.
Kind of tough, honestly, with the score to get a real score out of it because the greens were kind of a mess. A
Mhm.
lot of, like I said, a lot of standing water. When you putt the ball, it would roll and the water would fly up in the air. You know what I mean? So you just kind of couldn't gauge how hard to hit it. And I had a lot of three putts because of it. But other than that, stroking the ball better than I have in a long time. So I'm happy I stuck with that. And the other thing that's just been kind of I've been really enjoying is I'm loving this Arcos system that I'm testing
Yeah.
for the site. And we're going to be
Mhm.
doing a whole write up on it. I want to get a couple rounds under my belt before I do the full review. And this is not a paid endorsement by any means. I'm a kind of guy who really likes stats and having
Mm.
stats on my game, but I'm also the type of person that doesn't want to have to be too much out of my game, focusing on other things like physically writing down
Of
missed
course, right.
greens, whatever
Mhm.
it may be, or jotting them down on my phone. The fact that this thing tracks everything without like hands off, and I mean right down to the most fine details, is really cool. I'm really enjoying it.
So it knows if you miss greens?
Absolutely.
Wow.
It actually will know exactly where you missed the green. Percentages,
Incredible.
and what I'm doing, I can do it on my iPad, my phone. I go on online too, and I can go back through any round. I mean, going back as far as I want and see every single shot. One
Mhm.
thing that's a little bit of a pain for me is that our course just was redone 2 years ago, so some of the holes are not quite right yet. They haven't updated them because
Right.
what the system does is it relies actually on the aerial photography. It's actually really smart how it does it. It'll actually count your sand shots, and it knows if you're in the sand because it tracks your GPS and looks at the aerial photography to know you're in the sand. How cool is that?
That's incredible.
Yeah. So if some of my stuff is not reading quite right, like all of a sudden it said 100% fairways hit, which
Yeah.
I don't think on my best day I do that
Right.
because it didn't quite know where the fairways were yet. And I have to kind of manually readjust it. But other than that, I mean, I played that course up in Saratoga, which is an established course. It has all the details locked in. I didn't have to do a thing. It knew everything. I mean,
Yeah,
everything.
that's
So
neat.
it's so cool to be able to go back and dissect it. And plus, for this kind of long distance learning stuff, like let's say I'm working with Kyle or somebody else, and I want to send a coach something, I can kind of like show them screenshots or whatever it may be. Like, this is where my round was. So that's been a really fun one for me.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to reading that review and eventually testing it out with you. But since you mentioned your course, Frank, I just wanted to share this quick bit of advice before we jump into the show. Um, around what hole is it? When you and I played last week, I think it was the 16th hole, the par three. Something just clicked with me on that shot. Remember, I stuck the green,
Yes.
and then I stuck the green again on 18 par three, which was like a 200-yard par three.
Mhm.
What I discovered was I was picking, and I love to video myself. I love having people video me, while I swing. And I go back and I look at it, and I noticed that I was picking my head up at impact about an inch of where it should be. Really strange. And so I actually practiced this on the range all the week after, and I played 2 rounds the next week. I played horribly up there that day with you, and I was 10 strokes better on the next 2 rounds because you know how you see the coaches or caddies, they put the club on the pro's head as they're swinging, so they
Yes.
keep their head down.
Yeah.
I was concentrating on keeping my head all the way down. And let me tell you something, I'm hitting so many more greens. And that's why I tied my best score ever last Thursday. So, I found something that's working for me, which is awesome. And of course, it's the end of the season.
Yeah, of course. But that's such a great example of what I say all the time about just using your phone as just like
Yep.
a quick, and especially these new iPhones, they shoot in that incredible like 240 frames per second or something like
Right.
that.
Hmm.
I mean, just 5-10 years ago, people would have been begging for that type of technology. And
Right.
to have it in your pocket and ready to go, because it's so many times like we don't quite see it. Like, what are we doing wrong? So easy just to either set the phone up on the side or grab a buddy and say, just record me. And then you can kind of go back and look at it later. like we talked about with Kyle in the last episode, we don't want to get too overly concerned with the way our swing, quote unquote, looks, but we're talking about something different here. We're talking about just identifying those small areas, like you said, just not keeping your head down and then going back to that fundamental, you can see a huge change. So that's really awesome. Well, if nothing else, we'll be able to practice that a little bit more in the simulator over the winter. That's for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, but hey, it still works.
Yeah, it does. So other than that, a lot of exciting things going on around the site on Golficity. If you're not already, checking that out, I think the best way to do that is just subscribe to our free newsletter. You can get to that by simply going to golficity.com/subscribe, signing up. Like I said, it's 100% free. Great thing about that is you'll be notified when new articles come out, when new podcast episodes come out, so you don't miss anything, because so much instructional content that we're hitting on there, a lot of news stuff that's going on. And it's just really great to have like a kind of a new resource for that. So I definitely encourage everybody to go ahead and check that out. Even the fantasy stuff that we've been covering, that's fun. I mean, I like that because it kind of keeps us involved in the PGA Tour, even during this quote unquote off season or the slow season. That's the fall golf, but still a lot of exciting things going on. Let's just keep our fingers crossed we get to keep playing fantasy golf, right?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I love playing it, and I hope I get to play it forever. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Those daily sports leagues are kind of dropping like flies with some of these states not disallowing them, but I don't know. I don't know if that'll stand up. I kind of hope that they let us keep playing, because that is a lot of fun for sure.
Right.
All right, Mike, before we dive into our topic tonight, talking about some tips for how you can improve your lag putting, let's do a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of the Golf Podcast is brought to you by Realty Shares. Look, if you had money in the stock market over the past year, you probably broke even. You may have even lost some money. But if your dollars were invested in real estate in San Francisco, New York, Seattle, Chicago, just about any other major U.S. city, you likely would have enjoyed some solid returns. And diversification is the name of the game when it comes to investing. It's no different than your golf game. You wouldn't go out there trying to shoot your best score, only knowing how to hit one shot. You'd want to diversify that portfolio in the same way when it comes to investing. So if you want to diversify your portfolio by adding some real estate, look no further than realtyshares.com. Realty Shares is an online real estate investment marketplace that allows accredited investors to invest as little as $1,000 per transaction in residential and commercial real estate projects all across the United States. Thousands of investors have already used their platform to invest in real estate deals that are sourced and vetted by their experienced investment professionals. You can even browse and invest in minutes, all from your computer. When has investing in real estate been that easy? So go to realtyshares.com to create your free account today. They've already returned over $10 million to investors. So start investing today at realtyshares.com/golf. And remember, investments are risky and may lose value. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Now, back to the show. All right, Mike. So we want to talk about how to lag your putts like the pros, because we see it all the time. We see it on the PGA Tour, and these guys sometimes coming from these long range putts, 40, 50, 60 feet. So 40, 50, 60 feet. And what am I always enamored with when I see that? It's not necessarily, when they make it, it's rare. But just the fact that when they miss, it's not by much.
Right.
It's not like sometimes when we're out there playing and we have that long putt and it turns quickly into a 3-putt because maybe we leave it 6 feet short or 6 feet long. What these guys know is they know that speed is probably the most important thing when you're, reading and making your putt. And the fact is every golfer hates the 3-putt. I mean, that's one of those things that's so demoralizing. Walk away, it's frustrating whenever that happens. I mean, you hit 2 beautiful shots on the green. Maybe you made the green in regulation, but you're, 50 feet from the hole, and then end up with a bogey and you're just kicking yourself. So that's the thing we want to talk about tonight. We want to talk about what is it that the pros do, or what do they know that gets them to be so proficient in that lag putting, and don't get me wrong. You're never going to totally eliminate 3 putts from your game. Okay. Even, professionals have that from time to time. You see their 3 putts. But it can become much more rare as you get better and better at this. So let's talk about that a little bit. Is this something, Mike, that's a big part of your game? I know you started talking about at the top of the show how you've been getting better at this. I can say on the other side, I have not been very good at this part of my game, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. But what's your experience?
Yeah, it's been a key part of why I've been scoring so well lately. I mean, I've been scrambling a lot lately, haven't been hitting a lot of fairways, but once I'm getting the ball up to the green, I've been, like I said, one putting and two putting at most. This has been really helpful. I mean, I look back at the match I played last Thursday. I went out and shot my best score, but we lost. My team, we lost the cup for the year. Because it's unfortunate because my partner played really poorly because his putting was terrible. So here I am doing the best I've ever done, but we still lost because he was three putting everything, and and not just putting the ball to like a foot from the hole. He was blowing it by 5 feet and then missing coming back every single time. Just didn't have it. He didn't have that lag ability. He couldn't do it. But for me, it's been working really well.
Yeah, like they say, drive for show, putt for dough, right?
Exactly.
And they're not kidding. I mean, it really is where so much of the game is made up, especially because, like I said, if you're not giving yourself a really high percentage chance of making that second putt, you're going to be staring down a lot more three putts than you'd like to. And we talked a little bit on the site. We had a lot of in-depth articles come out about that 5 feet and in putting and how you can really increase the number that you make for that putt. But again, you got to get that first putt where you can put yourself in that position to make that second putt. So let's talk about how to get there. A couple steps that you can take. First thing, this may sound obvious, but it's got to be said. In order to get better here, you have to practice lagging your putts. And the reason why I definitely wanted to dive in and talk about this specifically is because we see a lot of amateur golfers when their practice is just going up there before they tee off and practicing those short putts, 5 feet and in and something like that. Now, I can't put too much blame on them there because I've been in that boat too. I've used, and I've talked about this before in a lot of episodes, I was doing a lot of those putts just because I wanted to build that confidence before I went out there. I didn't want to be putting long putts and missing them and stuff like that. But I went a little bit too far with it, and I was completely neglecting my long putts. And the couple thing that would be a problem there is by not practicing it during my warm up before I go out, it doesn't give me that chance to read how the greens are going to roll on long putts. Now I got a little bit of the speed with my short putts, but a huge part of success there is just taking that little bit of time before you go out, because every day, depending on the weather, like I talked about earlier in the show about how wet it was out there today or whatever it may be, just the way the sun is hitting the greens or if they rolled them or if they cut them or whatever it may be, it's going to affect that speed. And speed is going to come into, as a factor that comes into play a lot more on those long lag putts than it does on a short putt. So you definitely want to do that. But the other thing is you also just need to practice this so you can start to get the feel for it. Like when we talk about, Mike, you're saying like your partner missing it by 6 feet or whatever it may be. Right. It's just evidence of not having the feel. And there's only one way to get that, and that's to practice it, right?
Right. Absolutely. And, let's be honest. I mean, most of us, when we hit greens, it's not always by the pin, We're lucky if we get on and have, I find myself with 20, 30, 40-foot putts a lot more than I have, 6 or 7 footers. So this is why it's so crucial.
It is. And really every practice session you have, whether it be a little bit of a warm-up session, that you might want to abbreviate it in that regard, or if it's just at some time that you're getting down there and spending on the practice green, every single one should include some of those long lag putts. And way you can do this, the best way to do it is just start practicing rolling that ball all the way across the green. Get out there on the practice green, drop a couple balls and aim for the furthest flag on that green that you can, and then just try to roll it there. And what that'll do, and don't worry too much about your technique at that point. You just want to develop that feel. It's something that comes with time, just that feel. Just want to keep rolling that ball back and forth. Putt it to the furthest flag and then come back and putt it back the other way. And just through that repetition, you're going to become a lot more adept at those lagging your putts. Mike, on the article that I was referencing on Golficity where we talked about this, we embedded that video of Tom Watson. If you're going to listen to anybody, here's somebody to listen to, right?
Right,
and he's
exactly.
talking about how much the pros practice this. And you and I have talked about this when we cover the Barclays and other things like that. There's certain things you don't get to see because they don't show on TV the pros practicing this type of thing, but they're out there practicing it. He talks about why the pros spend so much time on it and why amateurs should do the same thing. And there's some very simple drills you can do. That's the nice part about this. We're not talking about practicing your draws and fades, where there's a little bit more involved. We're just talking about getting out there and getting that feel. And he talks about just taking a bunch of tees, sticking them in the ground around the hole, maybe 3 feet, try a 3-foot radius circle around the hole, and just putting those long putts and just trying to make sure that they're stopping in there. And just keep doing it. You're going to get that feel for it, and you're going to see that start to translate out on the course. And that's what I've been doing. And I have been seeing that success pretty quickly. I've been noticing my really long putts are tap in second putts, and it's not like, it gets rid of a lot of nerves, because the more repetition, the more comfortable you become with it too. I noticed that a lot of my long putts, there were a lot more nerves involved, and that's where I'd end up not rolling the ball, but punching at it or something like that, because I was unsure of my distances. I was, or I'd leave it dramatically short because I was worried about rolling it way past the hole. So now I'm working on that, and I'm feeling, as I do it, I'm feeling more and more comfortable. Just like with anything, with practice, it's going to get better. So that may seem obvious, but trust me, if you're not out there already doing it, or if you're spending too much time just doing the short putts, work it into your routine and see what happens. Work it into your practice routine, and I can almost guarantee that you're going to start to see that those strokes just shaving off, and you're going to start to feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
Mike, did you have anything to add before I want to jump to the next one?
Everyone practice the short putts. I mean, like you said, the long putts, the problem is that you have to deal with a lot more. You mentioned it before. The speed may be more, depending if you're uphill or downhill. You might be going through 2 breaks. You might be doing a double breaker. So it's so important to have that stroke and to be able to lag from so far away. In my opinion, I think it's one of the most important parts of this game.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, that's why I'm so surprised why it's so overlooked, and why even I overlooked it so badly up until this point. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about technique. One thing I do want to note here is that for the most part, your lag putting stroke should be exactly the same as any other putting stroke. You don't want to mix that up. You don't want to change it up too much. But if you were to do one thing a little bit different for these longer putts, that would be to stand a little bit taller over the ball. Okay. The reason why that can help is because most likely you're going to have a little bit longer stroke, obviously to cover that longer distance. Just standing a little bit taller can help facilitate that, because it gives you a little bit more room to move through the ball. Now, remember, you still want to be keeping those, arms and hands mostly out of the putting stroke. You don't want to be breaking your wrists and slapping at it or anything like that. But just standing a little bit taller, if you're having trouble, feeling that consistency and being able to swing a little bit bigger, you can try this, and you will see that you're getting a little bit better at it. But one thing that's very imperative in this, without a doubt, whether you're standing a little bit taller, you decide to do that or not, you want to keep that lower body absolutely stable. Striking your putts on the sweet spot is one of the biggest reasons why you're going to have success with this type of long putts, because again, you don't want to be slapping at it, punching at it, and seeing that ball skip before it starts rolling. Right. You want to put a nice consistent roll on it. But when you don't have that good roll on the ball right out the gate, that's where you start to see where you're missing your distances, because it's a little bit less control over the whole situation. So that, to me, honestly, that's where I've been trying to focus the most of my lag putting energy when it comes to practicing, is just making sure that I'm putting a good roll on it. And one thing that comes with that is hitting that sweet spot. So if you want to work on the sweet spot, the biggest thing that we always suggest is that gate drill. I know you're a big fan, right, Mike?
Yeah, I use it quite often. It's great.
Yeah, very simple to do, very low tech, so to speak. Just go out there, put your putter down, set up put a tee in the ground on each side of your putter, and just make sure that you're coming straight through and not hitting either one of those tees. And what that'll do is make sure you're hitting that sweet spot. Because the other thing too is, don't forget, anytime you get outside that sweet spot of the putter, whether it be towards the toe or the heel, you're actually deadening the ball. You're not putting, transferring as much energy to the ball. So although you may take the right amount of swing through the ball, you may take the right amount backswing and swing through, if you don't hit that and you hit on like somewhere outside that sweet spot, your distance is not going to be correct, because you're going to kind of deaden that ball. And what's going to happen is that's going to be magnified over those longer putts. A shorter putt, you may not notice it by much. Maybe the change is only a couple inches. But over a 40-foot putt, that could be a 6-foot difference by just not striking the ball well. So that's another area to get out there and practice. And truthfully, you can just practice this even at home, just making sure you're hitting that sweet spot over and over. If you have a carpet or somewhere you can do it. So that's going to be a really important one. And then another thing is, and this may sound a little bit counterintuitive, but you don't always have to try to make the putt. When you're legging that ball across the green, just trying to get making the putt out of your mind sometimes can help take a little bit of that pressure off, take a little bit of that hyper focus off, so to speak. And that's where you can kind of envision that 3-foot radius. Like, don't forget, I don't want to discourage people, so to speak, from making the putt. We've talked about visualization before and visualizing the ball going in and how that helps. But I'm also talking about playing with some reasonable expectations here, with some smart course management. Even the best PGA Tour players only make those 20 to 25 foot putts about 30% of the time. Okay. So that tells you something. Sometimes when you get a little bit too aggressive going for that hole or locking in on that, it can cause, some problems where you're missing more than you should. So instead of thinking about making that putt, picture that 3-foot circle around the hole and use that as your target. It's a nice big fat target. It's a little bit more pressure, and just try to get that ball to stop inside the circle, and you'll have an easy, tap in, so to speak, second putt, which honestly, I think there's not a golfer in the world who wouldn't say, if I was faced with a 50-foot putt, that I wouldn't be happy coming out of that with a 2-putt, right?
Right.
So that's where you can kind of get your mind out of that aggressive frame of mind, so to speak, and just kind of worry more about putting a good solid roll on it and getting it within that, mental circle that you put, right?
Right. And, it's funny because when you play team golf, you find yourself acting as a coach that day, just helping your partner. And the whole day, Frank, all I was telling him was, you do not need to make this putt. Just get the ball close and tap it in, and we're up by 2 or we're up by 3. So, that was my pep talk the whole day, but it wasn't working,
Right. But look, no matter what, and that's the thing too, if you can start getting where you feel that confidence to get it inside that, so to speak, 3-foot circle, you're not going to believe how this translates to other areas of your game of confidence. You'll find that you have a little bit more confidence to go after greens because you realize, look, as long as I'm on the dance floor somewhere, I know that I can rely on my putter to get it in 2. There's so many things that'll come to it. And trust me, it just feels great to know that you judge those distances right. There's few things that are more frustrating than putting and just that second putt being another knee knocker because you went so far past the hole or so short. And you see it, like I said, just watch the PGA Tour. These guys are just incredible sometimes how far away they are. And then I know in the highlights, usually they'd only jump to all the made putts. So that's where you sometimes just forget the highlights for a second. Just watch the guys on that, just every day, whatever, their long putts, and just watch how much, if they miss, it's not by much. And it's usually not because of speed. It might be something to have to do with the break a little bit. It breaks a little more than they think. It ends up on the left or right side of the cup. But it's amazing how many of those guys, even on a 40-foot putt, the ball stops, right within a foot or so, no, even less, I should say, a couple inches of where that hole is, just left or right. That's what's so amazing. And that just shows you that that's where they're making up a lot of their differences.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Now, remember, again, I don't want to get people out there too discouraged. They do this and they feel like they're still making 3 putts. Look, even the best putters are going to 3-putt on occasion. Even, former Masters champ Adam Scott, I know he's been going through some changes with his putter, but he, and even still using the long putter for a lot of, which he's more comfortable with for 2015, he was still averaging 0.83 3-putts per round. So that's almost 1 hole per round that he's still having a 3-putt. And it's Adam Scott, So it happens, just forgive yourself when it happens, but just keep focusing on this and you will get better with time. But it really comes down to that feel. It's all about feel, and feel comes from practice, and that's where you're going to get that difference. So that's been a big one for me. And how about you, Mike? Anything else that you want to add before we wrap that up?
No, I'm actually really excited that we spoke about this because I have a feeling Friday's probably going to be the last round of the year. I mean, who knows? I keep saying that, but between my little, head trick that I figured out, keeping my head down, and now putting a little more emphasis on this now that we spoke about it on Friday, who knows? Maybe I could break my best round ever on the last round of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I do break it, that will be the last round of the year.
There you go. Yeah. Packing it on a high note.
Exactly.
One other little thing that I just thought of that I've been doing for visualization, especially for these longer putts. And one thing that comes into this, we didn't talk too much about it because we're talking about the mechanics here, but reading the putt, obviously, it comes a lot into play with a long putt like this, because the longer the putt, the higher the chances of having multiple breaks. And I don't know if this will work for other people. I don't know if they play this or whatever it may be. But one thing that's been helping me is I like to play a lot of bocce ball. And I think you do
Same
too.
idea.
Yeah. And you know what I do is I actually use that as a lot of visualization. Like I'll stand behind the ball and I'll think, if I was holding a bocce ball right now, because you really have to survey that terrain when you play like backyard bocce ball. I'm not talking about in a nice flat, sandbox.
Right. You got to know which way it's going to bounce and turn.
Break and stuff like that. So sometimes I'll actually stand behind the ball and visualizing myself just kind of like tossing a bocce ball and just thinking, where is it roll? It just, it's in a way, it's no different than visualizing where your putt, if I was, but it just gives me that little bit different connection because I'm physically throwing the ball. Or sometimes I'll just take it in my mind and just think, what if I were to pick up this golf ball right now and just toss it like a bocce ball? What kind of speed would I have to put on it? Where would it break? Where, after it lands, where would it roll? And for me, it's just been a little trick that's really helped.
Do you actually do the arm motion before you putt or no?
I try to keep it in my mind so people don't think I'm too crazy out there.
Yeah.
But it really has helped. I mean, everybody's got a different thing,
right,
as far as what it might be is what might help. But that's why I just wanted to share mine, because maybe it triggers something else in you that you think, here's another thing I've done before. That one funny thing is a lot of the guys at the local course who tend to be the best putters, kind of funny, is guys who worked in construction a lot of their life. A lot of guys who did surveying and stuff like that. And
That's interesting enough,
because they're just so used to like looking at the lay of the land and kind of seeing, where there was one guy who my father used to play with a lot, and he was his whole life he was a developer, he was a builder, but he was very hands-on, excavating, things like that. So he could kind of just look at the lay of land and see where the high spots are and the low spots, and it just really helped with the way he read his breaks. So everybody's got different ways, but again, just kind of find your own, and you'll see that it'll click a little bit better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All this stuff is very helpful.
Yep. All right. So that's everything we have for tonight. Before we wrap things up, I just want to remind everybody again, check us out on the web at golficity.com. And if you want to stay up to date, because I mean, just pounding out articles right now, so much instructional stuff coming out, just trying to help everybody's game in any way we can. The best way to stay up to date with that is just subscribe to our free newsletter. You can go to golficity.com/subscribe. Or the other thing you can do too is just like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter, because I know all of the articles that we post, they go out that way. We share them. It's a nice thing too there as we get a little bit of a conversation going, just talking in the comments or whatever. A big one everybody's talking about right now is that how to build a golf simulator for under $2,000 that we shared. And it's just kind of funny. Everybody's ramping up for the off season and everyone's resharing it, showing their buddies, being like, hey, let's go halvesies on this. We'll get in on it. Smart idea too. So definitely do that. Follow us. Just go on Facebook, search Golficity. You'll find us, like the page, and you'll be kept up to date on all that type of stuff. Same thing with Twitter, Google Plus, or however else you want to follow us. So that's everything we have this week. We'll be back again next week with even more instructional content. We're going to talk about ways that you can improve your game from a scrambling standpoint. We've got lots of great guests coming up, so definitely tune in. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that subscribe button on iTunes, and that's the best way to see those new podcast episodes as soon as they come out. All right, so thanks as always for listening, and we'll see you again next week.